some games.
We're back on live
really
stream,
difficult.
Joey. Let's talk about Louisville. Georgia Tech's not really, with Jeff Sims, their quarterback, entering the transfer portal, Georgia Tech's not really a fun team to do a deep dive on. Let's shift gears to Louisville. Louisville's projected to finish 7th in the conference. This is not a team I want to break down in depth, but I think they're an intriguing team for a few reasons. They have 3 players on offense that can be impact players. Jawar Jordan had 815 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns at running back last year. And replacing Malik Cunningham is Jack Plummer. California Golden Bears quarterback Jack Plummer, son of Jake Plummer, is now the starting quarterback at Louisville. And Jeff Brom, the offensive coordinator at Purdue, is now the new head coach at Louisville. And I think he brought his brother Brian Brom with him as the offensive coordinator, because I think Jeff Brom was the offensive coordinator at Purdue and Brian Brom was the quarterback's coach. Now Brian Brom is the offensive coordinator at Louisville. And 15 years ago, when I was still in high school, people were talking about Brian Brom as an NFL prospect. He got drafted by the Packers. There was actually a time period where some people thought Brian Brom would replace Brett Favre instead of Aaron Rodgers. It's pretty crazy how time flies by. That did not transpire, but, you know, Louisville's...
Brian Brom ended up being one of the biggest busts in a long time at that time in the NFL. So, yeah, I'm still...
But I'm interested in Coach Brom's staff because the new defensive coordinator at Louisville is Ron English. So Jeff Brom, he brings in Brian Brom as his brother as offensive coordinator. He brings in Ron English as the defensive coordinator. So this is a very interesting team. I know I'm looking away at looking away from the camera. I know that's not good, but I'm trying to memorize as much notes from as possible. And the NFL draft prospect that's a senior, I don't view Jack Plummer as a serious NFL draft prospect, but if he puts everything together like Malik Cunningham did, who knows? Maybe he gets picked. But the one prospect that Louisville has on the offensive line is center Brian Hudson. This is probably the best center since Eric Wood was there. Eric Wood was a 2009 first pick. And Brian Hudson's an interesting player. Louisville lost their 2 edge rushers to the NFL draft, Abdullah, and they also lost Abdullah and they lost the other edge rusher at the Shrine game. I forget their names, but Louisville, I think Louisville can be a surprise team. I think Louisville can finish in the top half of the ACC, but it just comes down to, again, like you said with Boston College, how far can Jack Plummer, the son of Jake Plummer, take this team? Can Jawar Jordan pound the rock? Those are the 2 big questions with Louisville, because if they can, this offense is going to keep them in some contests, Joey. Even with the losses to Yasir Abdullah, and they lost another edge rusher the 2023 NFL draft. They had 2 good edge rushers that both got drafted, I believe. Louisville did. So I'll look that up for a second on my phone, but like, what are your thoughts on the next ACC team?
Louisville this year doesn't excite me. They think this is the
because I like Louisville's defense. Louisville has 1 or 2 players on defense, and I just don't get that energy from their defense this year. I like the Ron English addition at defensive coordinator, but where are the impact players in the defensive side of the ball? They do not have a single first-team player on defense. This is the first time, I think, since before Jair Alexander where Louisville hasn't had an impact player on defense, Joey. That's really the thing that stands out with me, and it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for Louisville. I'm surprised you like Boston College more than Louisville, but it is what it is. You know, Louisville had those 2 edge rushers drafted in the 5th round. They had Yasir Abdullah drafted by the Jaguars. Yasir Abdullah, that is a guy to watch for the Jaguars. And Yasir Abdullah out of Louisville. And I believe Louisville had a second edge rusher that was drafted in the draft. may have been a 3rd or 4th round pick. He may have got overdrafted, the player I'm thinking of. Because I had like a 6th on Abdullah, and I know they had a 2nd edge rusher picked in the NFL draft. Who are we looking at? Yeah, I know Louisville had a 2nd edge rusher. Yaya Diaby. Yaya Diaby was the Buccaneers' 3rd round pick. So they don't have Diaby or Abdullah. So that alone is why I do not trust this defense. I mean, some of the players they have include Benjamin Perry. They do not have a single senior player. They have 6 returning starters, but none of them are seniors, Joey. So that's why I am very bearish on Louisville. I know they're projected to finish 7th in the conference, but I think that's their ceiling. I think we're in agreement that's their ceiling, because you look at Louisville teams in the past, they've always had one impact player, whether it's Jair Alexander, Yaya Diaby, and Yasir Abdullah, edge rusher, whether it's a linebacker, whether it's a defensive tackle. I think, Joey, we're used to seeing Louisville have at least one impact player on defense. And even though I like the coaching staff, they don't have that impact player. They got to go out and recruit that player and discover him. So
we're used to seeing Louisville just have impact players
on defense.
The pass rusher, the
corners,
corner,
they do have 2 returning starters at safety, but they're both juniors. Josh Minkins and MJ Griffin could be guys we're talking about a year from now, but they're not guys we're going to be talking about right now. I think that's the big point you're trying to hit at, Joey, and that's kind of why I didn't want to spend too much time on Louisville.
Yeah, they're maybe next year they've got these guys that are going to be coming up, but this year they're just not what they have been.
Yeah. We'll save Miami Hurricanes for later in the show. I'm gonna break down and we'll save the Tar Heels for later. So we're gonna go to North Carolina State. They have 3 impact players replacing their quarterback. I like their transfer to Kentucky. So he's North had last year. Devin, he's replacing Will Levis at Kentucky. And frankly, I think he's going to Levis, but that's a conversation we'll have in a few weeks. Talk about the guy coming in to replace Leary. Virginia Cavaliers quarterback Brennan Armstrong, who in 2021 but was god-awful last year, is now the new Wolfpack quarterback. And this North Carolina State offense, they have a senior receiver, 31 receptions, 342 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then Anthony Belt and Dylan McKenna are returning starters, but they're none of them are starters, but seniors still developing. And frankly, none of them showed the ability to pick up where Iquanu left off. I think that's a big reason why the Wolf went down to Clemson. I think he lost to Clemson, but then after that game, they lost to Clemson. They lost to their last 4: Boston College, Louisville, and Maryland in the bowl game. I mean, but Wilson did come back. 3 linebackers. Peyton Wilson did come back, the captain of the defense. And the other player to keep an eye on, 4 interceptions, and was a first-team All-ACC selection with 46 total tackles and 4 interceptions. And another player in that secondary to keep an eye on is Shaheem Battle, who had 2 interceptions as a junior. So they've got their best cornerback duo since David Amerson was draft eligible back. So I'm watching Peyton Wilson. I'm watching these corners. Brennan Armstrong. This is not a title contender, but this is a team that they had 2 losses to Syracuse and Clemson heading into the last 4 weeks of the season before losing 3 of their last 4, including their bowl. So what type of presence are they going to bring this year in the ACC? Because, frankly, North Carolina State is projected to finish 8th in the conference behind Louisville. And I think the potential Louisville is there, as crazy as it sounds. Now, the ACC changed their rules. It's the best 2 teams in the conference will meet in the ACC title. So they're like the Pac-12 now, where instead of having the Coastal and Atlantic winners play in the title game, it's going to be the 2 best teams in the conference meet the ACC. I mean, I think Carolina State, how do you feel about them, Joey, before we get to the next team? Because the next
team, I think
we're to finish 8th behind Louisville. I think they could finish 7th ahead, as crazy as it sounds. Here's on defense, excite me. At least with the Wolfpack, they've got Peyton Wilson. They got their 2 corners who combined for 6 interceptions. So, I mean, their best quarterback tandem since 2012.
Spectacular, but not.
When David,
they're not good, but they're going to be nice.
Yeah. So, the team is projected to finish 9th in the actually, they're projected to finish 10th at Syracuse. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised they're projected that low. I mean, if Sean Tucker had came back for his senior year, I think the dark horse to win the conference. I mean, at one point, Syracuse was undefeated before Garrett Williams got injured. This team was undefeated, and they were in position. They had Matt Bergeron at left tackle, Sean Tucker at running back, and Garrett Williams. And, you know, Syracuse has some interesting pieces, Joey. They have Garrett Schrader at quarterback, who had some moments last year. Aronde Gadsden, the tight end. Aronde Gadsden, the tight end for Syracuse, is a guy who I've seen mocked in the day 2 of the 2024 NFL draft. I've seen Gadsden mocked as high as the 2nd or 3rd round of some 2024 drafts. And he's a player I saw make some plays and impress me last year when Sean Tucker wasn't running the ball. He was making the plays. Gadsden at tight end for Syracuse. And the player to watch out for Syracuse on defense is their edge rusher, Caleb Okekwu. Caleb Okekwu, the edge rusher on Syracuse, led the team with 7 sacks. Can he get double-digit sacks and carry this defense on his shoulders and kind of pick up where Garrett Williams left off? That's really the big question with the defense for Syracuse. If he can, Syracuse might buy some people, but I get it. They lost their left tackle, Bergeron. That's a big loss because he's now the starting left guard on Atlanta, who we'll preview next week. There's, you look at Syracuse, they lost their running back, Sean Tucker, who went undrafted because of his medicals, but he still has a chance to win the backup running back job on the Buccaneers. And then you have Garrett Williams. I wonder what happened. I thought Garrett Williams got drafted, or did he go undrafted? I'm going to look that up really quickly before we move on to the next team. He's on the Cardinals. He was drafted in the 3rd round. I thought he would fall to the 5th round due to his medicals, but the Cardinals took Garrett Williams in the 3rd round of the draft. And the Cardinals' cornerback situation is god-awful. I would not be surprised if Garrett Williams emerged as their number 1 corner. Because he was good before his injuries. Like, he was really freaking good before his injuries. Like, we both liked Garrett Williams. And you were telling me I was overreacting by moving him down to the 5th round after he didn't work out at the Shrine game and after he didn't work out at his pro day. You were telling me I'm too crazy to let him recover from his injury and let this whole thing play itself out. I guess the Cardinals agree with you since they took him in the 3rd round. But who's going to step up on that secondary with Garrett Williams gone? They have a rover in Justin Barron, and they have Elijah Clark, a junior free safety, who's a returning starter on the secondary. And it's going to be up to Clark to pick up where Garrett Williams left off. I mean, Syracuse interesting team. I don't think they are a top half team this year. I don't think they're the 10th worst team in the ACC. How do you feel about this team before we get to Virginia Tech, and Wake Forest, and just get these teams out of the way that we don't expect to do anything?
Yeah, they didn't meet expectations. A couple of the players did meet expectations, but not all of them. Not as high on them this year, for obvious reasons. So, I mean, they're okay. They're still good, but they're not.
I don't think they're a top
echelon.
half team, but at the same time, I also don't think they're the 10th worst team out of 14 teams. That's where Athlon Sports ranked them. They ranked them 10th. I don't agree with that. I would put them at 8 or 9 personally, but they're right around that range.
Agree with that.
But let's move on to Virginia. Virginia's losing their quarterback, Brennan Armstrong, and the one player they have is Chico Bennett Jr., an edge rusher who had 7 sacks at defensive end, and he plays the banister role for Virginia. This is the first time since 2007 where Virginia starters returning on the defensive line. So, just saying, keep an eye on the Virginia Cavaliers defensive line. This is their best defensive line since Chris Long was draft eligible 15 years ago. So 16 years ago now, but yeah, I mean, Virginia's always had good defensive backs, and they had good defensive linemen back in the day, but Virginia has always for their offensive line and their defensive back. I feel like line the transfer portal. I feel like Virginia outside defensive backs, really not much tradition anymore in terms of them being a position unit. They're still a DBU, but longer an O-line U or a DBU. But back in the day, you had a good defensive line. This is the first time we had 4 starters. So I think noteworthy because that defensive line is going to have to transfer portal. Armstrong and Tony Muskett is taking over Virginia. Muskett, quarterback on Monmouth in the last year. So a guy really hurt anyhow. Think of Virginia. I mean, they're a team for sure. Because they do have Jarvis Jones, 365 yards. He's like their only return outside of their high furnish. 4 returning starters and they're all seniors. Remember the last time it happened, Joey? I think may have been was. So I definitely think it's interesting because it wasn't lineman like they did back in the day when Long was a draft prospect. They've been more than these their offensive linemen. Even brickish off overall. So other linemen went to Virginia thinking they get picked early in the draft. And the tradition's been the offensive line, Joey. It's been there at the defensive line. It's been there with the Wicks on. So they're going to have new starters at receiver. Virginia do you think about this group? We're live on say anything because any minute, wasn't all things third back and and Grant Wells led the rushing yards.
I do like the combination. They have a good receiver and quarterback. I think they have put up a lot of yards.
I need to in what I left is Nick Cal led the team in yards, and he's a senior. But I put him. I'm making sure that before Joey for not. I'm just letting you know this can end at any moment. Grateful we're still on the air. I'm just grateful that nobody plugged yet. But, for Forest
it's not bad. Not they're a team that doesn't impress me that much. I mean, they're just another team.
Yeah, I got teams that me out of the Joey. The teams that impressed me, those are the teams deep dives on, and we just don't have time to do every single ACC team. We know why I get them out, but I'm interested in the three teams with 10 and prospects. Put those teams top 5. Also going to put North Carolina in the 5 because Drake. So and Miami, Florida, injury that both and I dealt with that. So it's possible I in one team. It's possible the Hurricanes. It's also possible doing well. Duke are projected to go 8-5 and 3 in conference. So I'm on the chopping lumber 6 ACC. Duke at 5, Miami 4, and Pitt 6. Have many as 10 prospects. NFL prospects. I think they could potential dark. So I think 5 teams. I think they're 5 teams. That's a fair evaluation. Fair evaluation. The Yinzers back in third. So 5 team. I think that's a fair. Who's going to put on the chopping block here? The Hurricanes and the Devils. Hurricanes have offensive and they only have fell picks. Blue Devils and Jim Nick is out the prospects multiple times. So I'm leaning towards putting the Hurricanes and putting Duke in the top 5. So what are your here? I picked the Hurricanes to win the ACC. I mean,
well, Duke always had but they've never been able to get over the. I think their quarterback,
play and then decide. Impact. No, North Carolina going to get to them, but they're not. We're no doubt.
We were talking about North Carolina.
No, we're showing the list down as 6 contending ACC. We're trying to weed out the dough. Florida, Clemson, North Carolina have made out of the five. I want your input, though.
Miami consistently has one of the most athletic teams in the country. I think this year they have not only one of the most athletic teams, I think they may have one of the most talented defenses. I'm not as high on their offense, but their defense has a lot of talent on it. And
I'll pull up
the safeties as you.
Because this is one Growy and I disagree on. Duke has 9 returning starters on offense and 8 on defense. So Duke has 9 returning starters on offense and 8 on defense. The Hurricanes have 5 returning starters on offense and 7 on defense. And it's been revealed that Tyler Van Dyke played through multiple injuries like Baker Mayfield did after the Browns made the playoffs and beat the Steelers. And their left tackle, Zion Nelson, still a first-round pick and one of Walter Football's 2024 mock draft. So I think the Hurricanes are an interesting team, and I still believe Zion Nelson can be a day 1 pick. Tyler Van Dyke's going to have some work to do after last year. He had potential. If you just watched his 2021 tape, Tyler Van Dyke, there were some moments where it looked like he could be a first-round quarterback. You didn't see that in 2022. But the Hurricanes, they have 7 returning starters on defense. They have Corey Couch as their nickel corner. He's the one senior they have on defense. And Cameron Kitchens had 6 interceptions as a sophomore. I've seen him projected to go in the first round. And Jafari Harvey had 5.5 sacks for the Hurricanes at edge rushers. So the Hurricanes are more athletic, but Duke has more returning. So I'm going to play devil's advocate and pick Duke to finish 5. I think Joey's got Duke at 6 and Miami at 5, but I'm going to go Duke at 5. Just devil's advocate. But I won't be surprised if I'm wrong here because Miami, whenever you expect Miami to be usually let you down. And whenever you expect them to suck, they end up being surprisingly good. That's the thing I've noticed with the Hurricanes in recent years.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to work with here is that, I don't expect Miami to have a good offense. I expect Miami to have a really good defense.
Duke's Clemson at home in the opener. Duke's toughest game is on the road against North Carolina. They get Notre Dame at home. They get NC State at home. They get Florida State on the road, which they're going to lose, and they get North Carolina on the road. They're going to lose those 2 games minimum. They're probably going to lose to Clemson. I think Duke has potential to be an 8 or 9 win team, but the problem is their schedule. They get Clemson. They get Notre Dame at home. They get Pitt at home. They get North Carolina and Florida State on the road. They get Northwestern at home, but that could be a game where Northwestern goes into Duke and upsets the Blue Devils. So, that's why Joey views Duke as a 6-6 or 7-5 team because of that schedule. It's not that Duke can't put everything together with 9 returning starters on offense, with 2 senior wide receivers, Eli Pankold, Jalen Calhoun, Jordan Moore, Barton, Maurice McIntyre at left guard, Jacob Monk. Nicky Dalmoyne is a 2-year starter at tight end for Duke. He's taken over for Noah Gray at the tight end spot. Duke has the talent to put everything together. The problem is they haven't applied themselves as a program in football yet. I have more confidence in Duke's soccer team and Duke's football team. And there is a lot of turnover in college soccer, Joey, but the Duke Blue Devils are the one team that has all 4 defensemen returning, and they have their defensive midfielder back as well. Their Shakur Mohammed, the second pick in the MLS draft. Duke has all their defenders in college soccer back. That's what gives Duke a really good chance to win college soccer next year, because Duke was one of 3 teams that finished the regular season undefeated along with Washington and Kentucky, and they have all defenders back. So as long as somebody on the offense steps up, they're going to win a majority of their games. As long as the goaltending doesn't suck, they're going to be in a lot of games because of their backline or defense. Even though I like Duke, I'm not as confident in their football team as I am in their basketball team or their soccer team. And, that's really the big thing with Duke right now. Are they heading in the right direction? Yeah, they've been heading in the right direction for a few years now. Ever since Daniel Jones drafted 6th overall, I think Duke's their football reputation has kind of gone up, but they haven't taken that next step yet. And for you're waiting for Duke to take that next step. And until it happens, you're just not going to give them the benefit of the doubt. At least with Miami, there's some prestige. I think that's kind of what you're getting at. But I'm going to go with Miami at 6.
A little bit, yeah.
And Duke at 5.
A little more, it's a little more of, I have more faith in the athletes and the overall talent of the Miami defense. And I'm in that category where
I do love Graham Barton.
Offensively, but defensively,
Graham Barton could be a first-round pick for Duke because he led the country in pancake blocks, and he had the highest grade amongst left tackles in the ACC, according to Pro Football Focus. And Nagy's saying he's more of an interior lineman. So, he could be a guy who gets picked in the first round with a really good Senior Bowl. I don't dismiss that at all, because I had a conversation with Dion Reed, the Ravens Facebook group, and Dion's like, I want Graham Barton. They would probably, if they drafted him, would probably play him at left guard where Ben Powers played, because right now, we'll get to the Ravens in a little bit, but I'm going to put Duke at 5 and Miami at 6. Joey's probably going to put Duke at 6 and Miami at 5. He might put Miami at 4. I'm going to put Pitt at 4. I know Pitt's ranked 6th in the ACC according to Athlon, but the Pitt Panthers have 10 returning starters. North Carolina only has 2 returning starters, but they have the best quarterback in the conference. So they get the benefit of the doubt for that reason. But Pitt has Phil Jurkovec at quarterback. Rodney Hammond Jr. had 100 yards against West Virginia before Abin Khan started the rest of the year at running back. Pitt also has Mumpfield and Bub Means at wide receiver. They have Gavin Bartholomew at tight end, a potential day 2 pick in the NFL draft. They have Jake Cradle at center. David Green is the one returning starter at defensive tackle. 2 of Pitt's outside linebackers are really good in coverage and really athletic. Bengali Kamara and Shane Simon. And then they have MJ Devonshire at corner. And Ben Sauls is the best kicker in the ACC. So Pitt has 10 potential NFL prospects on their roster. And Pitt's one of these teams that just consistently reloads in the defensive line under Pat Narduzzi, because he was known for developing players in the front 7 as Michigan State's defensive coordinator. And ever since he came to Pittsburgh, he's gotten people to buy into the culture change. And he even brought Pitt a surprise ACC championship in Kenny Pickett's draft year. And I think that has sort of rubbed off on Pitt, and it's allowed the Pitt Panthers to attract better talent, whether it's through the transfer portal or recruiting. They are able to get better players in the front 7, mainly because of Narduzzi and that ACC title, Joey. I'm not saying Pitt will win the ACC. I think they are the 4th best team. I don't think they're the 6th best team. If Pitt is one of 3 ACC teams with 10 or more NFL players, I have to give them the benefit of the doubt and put them in the top 4. And if they can beat North Carolina at home, They can beat Florida State at home. Who knows? Maybe they get to a second ACC title game and play dark horse. But in order for that to happen, Phil Jurkovec just has to put everything together after struggling to be the starter at Notre Dame, after struggling. He did okay his first 2 years at Boston College, but injuries caught up with him. And he struggled last year. So Phil Jurkovec just has to put everything together and get hot in his draft year like Kenny Pickett did. Otherwise, Pitt's not going to be a top 4 team in the ACC. That's just the bottom line. Even though I love the fact that Pitt outsides the ball, they might have enough talent for you to put them in your top 5, Joey, but I think we're in agreement. They are a tier below North Carolina, Clemson, and Florida State, who are the consensus top 3 teams in the ACC this year. And only top 25 teams.
I think Clemson and North Carolina are, I think those 2 are going to be the cream of the crop, so to speak. And I think Pitt is in that second tier grouping. Not a bad team.
What's interesting is Athlon Sports has Florida State beating Clemson in the ACC title. And spoiler alert, I have Clemson missing the ACC title. I have a Florida State, North Carolina ACC title. Yeah. Clemson has the advantage of hosting both Florida State and North Carolina, though. So let's talk about the 2 players on North Carolina. They've got Drake May at quarterback, but they also have a good linebacker who could be a day 2 pick in Cedric Gray, who had 145 total tackles last year. Cedric Gray is a weak side linebacker on the Tar Heels. He's a senior. He put everything together last year like Chaz Surratt. Remember, it was a 2nd or 3rd round pick in the NFL draft 2 or 3 years ago. And he hasn't really put everything together yet. I think he's on the Cowboys. He's entering the 3rd year of his rookie deal this season, Joey. So, yeah, Cedric Gray's been able to put everything together and pick up where Surratt left off. And he was under the radar last year. Now he's on everybody's radar because not only did Cedric Gray lead the team in tackles, he led the team in interceptions with 2. So that tells me he's really good in coverage. If he not only led the team in tackles, but interceptions as well, that tells me Gray can drop back into coverage if you need him to. So North Carolina can win the ACC, but they are going as far as Drake May and Cedric Gray carry them, Joey. That is the bottom line. That is the bottom line. And
I think corners do have more.
Cedric Gray is a weak side linebacker, but when you're a weak side linebacker and you lead your team in tackles and interceptions, that tells me you're.
Didn't he play a little bit of a slot corner last year?
I think he did.
Didn't they play him a little bit of slot last year?
I'm looking that up. Boykins at nickel last year. They had DeAndre Boykins at nickel. They did run a nickel defense, Joey, but they had DeAndre Boykins at nickel, and Boykins is one of the returning starters at nickel. So
I was thinking they played him some at corner last year on the inside.
They did get Amari Gaynor from Florida State through the transfer portal. That's an interesting move because I remember Amari Gaynor starting with Jared Verse at the beginning of the year last season. So Amari Gaynor went to North Carolina, and North Carolina has Ritzy, Kevin Hester Jr., and Miles Murphy, 2 senior defensive tackles, two returning starters at edge rusher, and then you add Gaynor to that group from Florida State. I mean, honestly, North Carolina's edge rushers might surprise people this year with their depth at the position. That's another talking point that I really didn't prepare for the podcast today. But I'm going to break down Clemson, why I have Clemson. Clemson has Will Shipley at running back, Xavier Thomas at right end, Tyler Davis at defensive tackle, Rook Horo at defensive tackle, Barrett Carter and Trotter are the linebackers. They have 2 corners in Nate Wiggins and Sheridan Jones, and then they have Andrew Mukaba at strong safety and Jalen Phillips at free safety. If Clemson has a new offensive coordinator too, but this is the thing. Clemson, the good news for Clemson is they get the two toughest ACC teams in Death Valley with Florida State and North Carolina. That is the good news. The bad news is they have a new offensive coordinator coming in. It was Garrett Riley, the TCU offensive coordinator, who left TCU to go coach with Dabo Swinney. And the reason Clemson fired their offensive coordinator is because Cade Klubnik and DJ Ugalele both struggled. And let's face it, Clemson was really shaky in the passing game last year. None of the receivers really stepped up and showed they could be a 80 to 100 reception, 1,000-yard guy type of production you saw from Justin Ross before his injuries and Mike Williams and just a lot of receivers Clemson's produced over the years. We really didn't see that from any of Clemson's weapons last season. And we really didn't see much from the tight ends either. I mean, their tight end did get drafted, but the production from the offense was extremely underwhelming, Joey. It felt like the defense, Will Shipley and the defense made, and the offensive line took pressure off the quarterback. That's just the vibe I get with Clemson. And with Jordan McFadden gone, I don't think they're going to be as potent on the offensive line and offensive tackle. I think if Clemson's going to be an ACC championship contender, I think it comes down to Garrett Riley and Cade Klubnik. Those two have to step up. Garrett Riley was TCU's offensive coordinator. He took Max Duggan from a no-name quarterback who was a backup and turned Max Duggan into an NFL prospect. Garrett Riley was able to take Max Duggan and mold him and turn him into a day 3 prospect. With the weapons they had at TCU, with Quentin Johnston, Darius Davis, the difference between TCU last year and Clemson this year is TCU had better weapons on offense. They had Kendre Miller at running back. I mean, maybe we disagree here, Joey, but I don't think Clemson's weapons are as good as TCU's were a year ago. But it's interesting because if Klubnik and the offensive coordinator, Garrett Riley, put everything together, Clemson's going to win the ACC again, period. That's just the reality of the situation. But I look at Clemson's defense, despite losing Trent Simpson and some of their edge rushers, I think this defense is just as complete, if not more complete, than last year. And really, I think that's what makes Clemson a really interesting team. They only have one sophomore starting, Wade Woodaz, and he's taking over for Simpson. So, like, Clemson, and they get Florida State and North Carolina at home. They get Duke on the road to open up the season during Chick-fil-A kickoff week on a Monday. And that's going to be a fun game, Joey, because if Duke can actually upset Clemson, we're going to have to start paying attention to this Duke team and the NFL talent. I think Clemson will win, but I think it's going to be like a 37-24 type game where Clemson wins by double digits, but you see some potential from the Duke offense. That's the type of game I think we're going to get with Duke having 9 returning starters and Clemson only having 8 returning starters. I think we're going to see a game where Duke actually scores over 20 on Clemson, but they just can't do enough to beat Clemson. That's kind of what I'm expecting. Because I really don't, unless the defensive players for Duke step up and pretty much carry them to a win, I just see Clemson winning that game. Clemson gets Florida State at home. I think Florida State beats them. And I think Notre Dame beats Clemson. And I think North Carolina beats Clemson. I wouldn't be surprised if South Carolina beat Clemson. Honestly, I think Clemson's going to surprise some people this year. I have Clemson going 9-3, but I could see them going 8-4. I could also see Clemson going 12-0. That's the crazy thing. They're all over the place this year. They could be 8-4, 9-3. They could be 12-0 heading into the ACC title with a playoff spot on the line. They're because they have both. Yeah, they get Notre Dame, Florida State, and North Carolina all in Death Valley this season, Joey. That's why I say Clemson could be 12-0, but they could also be 8-4. They're all over the place. I saw Klubnik in the Orange Bowl. he was either making one read or taking off and running. He was no Trevor Lawrence. He was very nervous and skittish in the pocket. And his supporting cast is weaker than last year. Their tight end's gone. Joseph Nagata's gone. That's why I'm kind of leaning towards an NC Florida State ACC title. I'll give you the Florida State prospects now before you get your input on this. Florida State, quarterback Jordan Travis. I dig Travis. I don't love Travis, but he impressed me enough to the point where I like his footwork. I like his arm. I like his accuracy. And he could make up to 4 progressions. He's got to put everything together, but the potential's there. Trey Benson at running back had 990 yards, 9 touchdowns. Johnny Wilson was amazing at wide receiver last year. Ken LeBlanc kept telling me Johnny Wilson's a first or second round prospect. He went back to school. Jaheim Bell, starting tight end for South Carolina. He transferred to Florida State. Robert Scott Jr. is moving from right tackle to left tackle. You have Jared Verse at right end. Fabian Lovett at defensive tackle. Braden Fisk at defensive tackle. Florida State has the freshman of the year on the defensive line. They have Patrick Payton. Patrick Payton took the starting job from Amari Gaynor last year, Joey. So I look at Florida State's defensive line. I think their defensive line's more complete, and they have 2 senior linebackers in Bethune and Deloach. And they have Renardo Green, a senior corner. And they have Akeem Dent, senior strong safety, a player that was on our radar last year. Now, they did lose the other safety they had to the NFL draft, but, you know, Florida State, I think Florida State's a little bit more complete than Clemson, in my opinion. I have more faith in Jordan Travis and his decision-making over than Cade Klubnik. So here's what I'm going to do. Florida State, LSU, I have them upset in Death Valley. Last year, Florida State lost Clemson by TJ Ugalele starting. I think they Death Valley and they knock off Clemson. And I'm going to be beating too. Freaking lose crazy for Clemson, especially when they conference last year after favorite to win the conference. But it's interesting because on Sports says Florida State's got 12 players. Clemson only has 11. North Carolina has 2. But if they Clemson, they could have a perfect regular season with North Carolina. Their strength of schedule is easier. North Carolina going to beat play South Carolina in the Chick-fil-A game. Then they get App State and Minnesota at home. Then they travel to Pittsburgh. Reserve State be bitch to play. And they get home games against Virginia. They travel to Georgia, Campbell. They host Duke. And then they get Clemson November 18th. And not play Clemson the regular season last year. Able to creep radar. This year, 39. I remember she's the defensive coordinator at North Carolina. Texas. His name is Joey Gene Chizik. I'm gonna look it up because I don't to rest. Gene Chizik's name is very familiar. He was Gene Chizik. He was co-defensive on the that won national. And then I think he was head at Iowa State and Auburn, and he was head coach at Iowa State for years, and he left Iowa State to go. And Gene Chizik was the head of Auburn in 2012. Gene Chizik was coach on Cam Newton, won the national title. So the title as a defensive coordinator at Texas under Matt Brown, and the national Cam Newton as the head. So that experience well. Chip Lindsey is Lindsey. He was a Detroit. Then he was quarterback coach, offense at Southern, and then he went to Arizona State in 2016. So basically, offense at Arizona State for a year after Osweiler left. Went to Auburn. Went to their head coach. He was the coach / offense for Central Florida year. So, I think interesting but new offense for North Carolina. I really think Florida State on paper. If Drake May beats Susan and under a lot of throws, it was one read take on. He just had a little bit like a scared puppy dog in the Tennessee. Like I know Clemson routed North and I need respect that they deserve. Like they this was a team without and Ho. Kind of expecting a little bit more in at that and bring it. And you don't have Georgia plus, Florida Clemson's 11 players, State is 12. So I think State worst case scenario, Florida State goes to they get the ACC title game. Interesting sports has title just takes him in the title game. Seminoles end up claiming they're dominant ACC. That's happening, but like it's interesting because North Carolina has the easy schedule, but if you look at the top three, Florida State and Clemson, easy to Florida State road, Clemson hosts North Carolina, Florida State, Notre Dame. They are going to lose. They might. They're going to lose. Remember, for Dame's beating class few, and Howell against last year Clemson overtime should beat Clemson. I mean, I don't see a 12 team that's just table G. After testing all information, what are your final thoughts on ACC before we get to 12? Because these are 5 top 25 teams. North Carolina is the 5 State is 9th, and Clemson is 3rd. Believe, and they have more aspects than Clemson.
Has always had decent.
Let's face it, before Clemson won their first college era, before Clemson won their national title, the Florida State were the gold standard of the ACC. Those were the two schools that most NFL. Clemson began that reputation through the pipeline until their first time with the title. And
what has is the level of competition. For it gives me does because competition. Florida State put it all the last few years. They've had one time if they do together.
Florida State finished 11-2 last year. Florida State they wait by 10 points in that game where Samuel came in Tallahassee as by 6. Now go to death. Starting. Sam Howell's starting 4. So, they're a 1 team. I worst case scenario, State LS lose to Clemson 11 to make the ACC title game because with a loss to Notre Dame, North Carolina could be 12-1 with 11-1 loss to Clemson, and if it's 10-2 with the loss to Clemson, I think they got. I mean, if Clemson wins games against North Carolina and State, they're in the ACC title. That's just the latest situation. And
yeah, but also they put the other way.
That's the thing. Florida beats us. They beat. And looking at us, where State is 12-0 heading into the. I'll look at their. At South Carolina, Appalachian, Minnesota. They play could be a trap September 3rd, but they get on the without Jim Campbell, Duke it, and they get State at their 2 big games. And it's the thing with North Carolina. November, but they lost 4 to game Georgia Tech back at 4 points. They lost East State by field goal. Got up 30, and then they lost again by. So North Carolina, they got to finish. These teams have to tell 12, but I'm neither scheduling. With North, it's of them. They have 2 NFC pick compared to the 12 Florida has and the 11 has. I'm not saying this line of team has 3 Barnes, Ed Monty Gaynor. Those can give North Carolina from 30 game on their opponents. 12-0 are going to be out offense. That's just a line. They don't have prospects or Clemson. That's just line. There's Cedric Gray. They Boykins at nickel corner impressed. Got here from the transfer portal, and I like their defensive offense, but their 2 receivers. Trey gonna over, or is he gonna pass like Sam Howell did? Because like an similar situation when Howell was in his draft to go along with Rat. Howell just how's May gonna? That's the $1 million. How he's to the conference. Go with and North Carolina, but compared to long to be look like a mass again because that's what Swinney does. And right now, they fired their offensive coordinator Garrett Riley, the T center, and if Nick put it, may put every Carolina's a team to beat. And if they get their teams, Carolina play each other, but both as well. Not surprised if North Carolina State. I think them up Carolina is far more there.
Yeah, I think with conference, I think they 7, 8. We may disagree on the last could take that. I mean, we're in agreement on 3 teams, but in that area, top team.
I'm going Florida State. Clemson hiring a new. It is going to be a transfer year for that offense. Really, be Garrett and Klubnik. Those two come together and have pack here in 22. Klubnik do that in his first starter. He can. It's probably going to be Florida. And I'm going Florida State, North Carolina, even though conventional wisdom says it's State. This is the year where the Atlantic and Coastal teams, the Atlantic and Coastal division, Joe. This first year with 2 best conferences. So that's why Clemson over Clemson consensus right now. But I'm going to go Florida State over North Carolina because the one thing I want to see is a sense, but he can make a down open Appalachian State. How did he be even without John? And I thought Dre, so he's expecting, but how is he going to handle losing running backs and receivers on this? Because it's the exact situation with the new year as well. I'm North Carolina.
I mean, him was
Quan Green, their number 2 receiver as well. Not only did they lose one receiver, they lost their number 2. Exactly what so
yeah. That just make it tough. I think the whole do it.
I do too.
Tough.
So I don't trying to go lose to either lose to trying to think of Miami Clemson. If Tyler Van Dyke plays like he 20 before injuries, the Hurricanes are upsetting Clemson because first hard environment. I think the Hurricanes beat Clemson. Clemson will finish with losses. Beat North Carolina. So I'll one Florida 11 play for the. But I don't can make the have to see team. Well, I now 25 season the Big 12 is the consent for on sports. They started losing to Michigan. A big headship, missing the playoff as a result. They've got LSU at 6, Alabama. They've got State at 7, losing to LSU but winning the ACC. So I
think about North Carolina real quick.
Go ahead.
The receivers, what's going to be their star quarterback? It's going to be because if he leaves into maybe consideration without receivers,
Ian Cummings, right? Pro Football believes there is a window of Drake May to surpass the draft board. It's crazy. I agree with Ian because I like Caleb. Caleb was Jordan Madison. He held it back. Getting number 2 receiver back, Jerry Rice's son back. A lot of his weapons. May's losing his running back. Sam Howell lost her. He lost the other receiver his draft year folded up. Sam Howell loses his top 2 receivers running back, but he returns offensive left offensive tackle guard. So Sam Howell only had 2 returning from the line. So May having 3 returning. It's interesting. So I'm going for 8. My 4 out of 10. I'm making that prediction value like you do, Joey. Who are you picking to the ACC? I don't think the ACC champion will lay off.
ACC title. That's tough. Definitely with Clemson. Clemson is the nation. Now the second, I think it would be a toss-up. Carolina State.
You were originally North Carolina. When I told you North Carolina only have NFL prospects in Florida, it's a lot tougher.
I'm going to go back on this one. If
was thrown a run and the drop made 7-step drop from the Appalachian State where Josh missed the winner. Josh Downs, he was, I don't know if it was, but I know Josh may complete a 7 against Appalachian State. Now to make 5-step drop, and I've seen his progression. So I'm not decision making in the progression. My concern with did he make a 7-step and on the run? He is great at throwing on the run to his like Kenny Pickett, but Kenny Pickett was great on the run to his run, and he improved. He did that as the process went, and Drake is the opposite, throwing to his left side than he is his right side. Week to figure that out. Figure 2 weeks to season start. I mean, what happened? The ACC title game on the Seminoles to ACC. Joey, are you picking North Carolina to win the ACC title?
going to on. You have one of the list. I don't make that beat. North Carolina to be the prize.
Interesting. And I think because Florida comes in to make the state, we're Carolina advocate picking Florida to make it. You're picking Clemson to make it. Drake for the video, I think is kind of cool. So I think it's kind of cool that we have a Dre thumbnail. Not going to worry about looking right now. You can always do that after the show. So on that note, transition to the Big 12. And the Big, I have a quick the conference, American conference, because what happened is that Cincinnati, Central Florida left American Conference, Big 12, Conference USA with the American Conference. All the conference teams are in American Conference, which is conference, Joey. The American Conference is like a 5 conference now, Joey. Ain't much about it, but over to the schedule. Go in to piss off Kiffin and get angry. His play, then it's easy because when you think you think of Cincinnati, Florida, and teams that were to lay problem. Though the conference, it's basically Lane versus UTA. That's continent else. So I'm not going to spend too much time on American Conference. That's that picture. So to Lane with a consideration off Joey. I don't. They would be in the six. At Big 12. You have to get to the 12. Like, you have and F North.
Well, I would be, pretty.
All right. Let's talk 12. There's a few in the big mention for the top 5. We'll go Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas State, TCU, because surprisingly, Kansas State had the most prospects among the Big 12. Texas and Oklahoma would be the two on paper. Those two in the SEC, they're going to live out there. And TCU still the conference. So, I mean, Baylor is the team we'll open with. Their projected NFL spec, Gathers. He was the right tackle to Connor Galvin. He's king inside the left this year. So NFL play guard as well as tackle. I think that move on part because we saw Calvin was absolutely horrible combine because he showed versatility play position. He went up. I don't think he got did. I know he awful combine. About combine on cast, Joey, and I remember talking about Calvin. He did not have a good combine. He had a 5.4 yard and had minutes 93. Him to be 305, 15. He came in at 2-3. Little, if he could reps in the bench press, maybe you could look past. He had him, but he went and he goes. He's on the science card, but I like move right tackle Gavin Byek inside to left guard. I think smart. The only other player on the position is they're running Richard Reese had 72 yards rushing touchdowns as a treasure. If Baylor create any shot value, it's going to be Richard Reese and their junior quarterback Blake Shapen. So we're going to step up confidence teams outside top 5 reality.
And just quarterbacks for the win right now. I just saw a picture of the quarterback in the gym. Not want to get
Yeah.
with my hand. The muscle on their should be
Oklahoma State and TCU are the 5 teams in depth in the Big 12. I don't agree because Texas are not going to show any mercy with this being their fire in the Big pivot to the SEC. Aren't going to show mercy, but after 2 aspects are Kansas, you're surprised, and then TCU, the reigning 12 champion. No, TCU is the reigning 12 Big champion, but these lose 12, and they beat Michigan in the playoff of the national title. So I feel like TCU is earned enough respect in the top 5. But let's say you are exciting team than Baylor, in my opinion, because official now they have to keep Slovis. USC, he's at Westford. Slovis has been all over. 1 more year of NCAA eligibility. He never, and all male, all my at right guard, and line tackles, 3 interceptions, covered. The line smack there. They're secured. Best middle linebacker BYU's had since Fred Warner. So what BYU does. They're actually projected to go 6. Despite 14 teams, BYU is projected to make a bowl game in 6. I think they're an interesting team. I don't expect them to be in half of the league, but I think the team, despite Baylor's projected to be a more interesting team. Their situation with Slovis.
One, you should never draft a BYU quarterback before the 5th round. It's always going to be bad. Don't do it. Second, I have to question any team with the codes as a nickname. Just
BYU referring to team with the horn. BYU is interesting because if Keaton Slovis gets drafted, yeah, you did. Slovis gets drafted. Years if Keaton Slovis gets drafted.
And we that was good.
Seen Jared Hall got drafted, or did he get drafted? Let's look that up.
Yeah.
Jared,
I don't know if he got drafted or
he
not.
Drafted. He got drafted. Might be back up to Kirk. Honestly, yeah, I want to take a look at now, figure out the hell's going on. Jones is still a backup, Joey. So Nick actually could be a competent backup. Minnesota last behind Mullins. So fans,
you one really. So I mean,
Oh yeah, you have the first. Remember, they have King tackle that I mocked in the first. Let's see if they mentioned.
Okay, one left tackle. I
Kingsley
haven't seen Sue yet, but yeah.
Because remember, Sue was the left tackle I ended up in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
So they now have him. That's my fault. So this is
how far down BYU is that we're forgetting about a first round pick, because about even a first pick,
they're 6-6. Are Houston at 6-6, 3-6 in the conference? They have Cincinnati going 5-7 with Luke Fick, Watson, and going 4.
Yeah, that's a good way. We're going to get there through, and he rode on that way because
we're going to Cincinnati. We're going to get into the Bearcats next. I don't have a punter. That's Florida.
They've got a. That's the best thing you can say about them.
Florida, good defense. Florida has net punter. Their only first team is a soft, but he's got an awesome nickname. Dante Corleone, the defensive who led the team in the freshman, named the Godfather, like movie with Marlon Brando. Movie, by the way. If you coffee of Godfather and Al Pacino are the two movies I would recommend. Your Godfather 3. It's okay, but it is awful. The first two ones. We got the AFC North. Probably in some degree, you're probably about as tough as Al Pacino, original Godfather, because Leone. But then we would have skipped over some Big 12. You know, I don't skip over teams. Houston or one of the other new join the conference. You don't want to blame.
No. If we would have hit the BYU top conference in that conversation, but they do bad at the bottom, like so. So I think BYU because they suck and they one after that.
A right who could be picking Molly. Ben Water as high water, why you would tackle the team with exception. Your best middle. Okay, so you just refrain from stating more, so I'll give that. Not pay one of some based on their religion or their gender or circumstance. One programmer out back show. Okay, Cougar 2 runs. All
and everything up.
All Haskell for Stacy. So the Houston Cougars, that's it. And their back, they're two players on offense and ball. That's all the Cougars have. And for Houston, they have 7 returning offense, and they have 3 on is Freeman. That is one left tackle. Paul 9 blocking and general draft buzz. No Freeman. Apparently, holistic players. So I'll put players in my notes and write Paul because that tackle I did at the Senior Bowl who did a job. So Patrick tackle at center. Make on those two for line.
Well, very big in what the result of what they're very cute. 1 year 11 wins, the next year they're 6 wins. No real.
They year game against Louisiana. 8-5. They scored 3 points and lost. Their defense without Marcus, the corner of this draft, on that on a turn against Marcus Jones. Defense gave 7 points, and their offense scored 3 points. They had
terrific.
Joey scored their 5 losses. In fact,
Houston's offense has always been
one team that the one team that had Houston to under points was Wayne, but overtime Houston went to overtime, like memorable game of that game.
Yeah.
So how was content?
would be single pass leaders both from KT number 3 and forget
Yeah, we're left. We're done with Houston 12 team. Iowa State is interesting. Their projections and 6. Their player right now is Hunt took over at quarterback for 30. Rock only had 440 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns at well. Isaiah senior, Gary Big senior, corners a player lack of idea about Will Ford, Jay Anderson. There's a star on Iowa State, and they're a very team this year. That's why they didn't have much on them. They could still win 6 games. Side very for me. I think I agree with that. That's why I really didn't get in depth with. Add to Iowa State.
Not really. Iowa State for one reason or another player, but I don't know him.
Xavier Hunter Decker, Hutch on it, receiver, their running back did surprisingly poorly. Iowa State running back. They had Hall, they had guy rushing yards. Brees Hall, Brees Hall, 3 for left. So back at the start, under 5, kind of disappointing, Joe. Like Montgomery had Brees Hall. You're kind of used from that.
You're kind of used to some,
Some
good from them. They're used to seeing top.
Decker, he announced 14 interceptions and 3,040. It's not bad for the first start. He got to step up and carry the state up. 6 at best. And we'll get to Mike at State. They're a team that just they lost quarterback answers. They received Pratt 6 receptions, 18, but a meter. He had a meter. Over two touchdowns. Brennan at wide receiver. Oklahoma got 3 offensive line. Jake Spring left tackle, Cole and Wilson right, and then Benzer, who led the team with 76 tackles. And to keep Oklahoma State is all in all. Is a linebacker, also outside backer, edge runner, because Oklahoma run a 3-3. Calling all in and tap Oklahoma. Outside of the players, there's not really exciting. And I think agreement, those are impact, they're not stars. So because of that. Because those are players, but they're not stars. That blatantly obvious to me.
Yeah, it's blatantly because going about college football had to show because there was more teams, too much. Really have to come out, or else it's coming back to matters, but quarterback over the pass else. And that is football. You are not your own destiny. It's lighter. It's about you can do anything else. So it's like a good thing. And the team ain't got it. They do it, but don't have it's not showing that they because they don't have
State Lou Gruzard semi-finalist before a knee injury, so they did a decent kicker. They do the kicker. I would say right Oklahoma State is a 3.5. I said to Mike, he would get pissed off at his report. Man, it's a legendary rant. They'd be one.
You do have to remember years ago. I think years ago.
He's still
he really he's a much now. So
he is 5 years old. Weird coach of the ball. He is
5.
He had over almost in 2000 assistant offensive for 4 years over as a coach.
I definitely get it because he looks really 65.
He's 65. He's not 65.
Oh, I thought you said 5.
No, he's 5. He's 5. He's 5. But yeah, champ here is one. Brandon White gun Big 12 title, and with Matt Rule Panther 12 title years ago. Yeah,
and that in this never be health act or substance brand so bad and have the arm against everything and NFL and hit right center question.
The thing, like, if Oklahoma State they had beaten Baylor, they made the playoff. I got forced, but they their window of opportunity with Tev Jenkins, with some of the offensive line. I feel like that was a opportunity.
I with a mistake as they are
to finish 8. They're still 4 in the preseason, and they're to finish 8 conference. Open up against Central Arkansas, Arizona State, South Alabama. They go to Iowa State, but then they State on October 6th. They host Kansas weekend. Both games as much as Sunday. It's just Kansas and Kansas State or NFL talent. That's the bottom, and there's star power on those teams. So let's do
I feel it's pretty for you talking about top 10
and they're teams like they're consistent top 5 teams. Well, usually they are a top, and maybe like Oklahoma, ACU forms them. Though,
and
kind of
so they are at the top of their year, and hopefully next because a good talent there.
Well, here's a team that's projected to
on the conversation.
a team 5 in the between. Just missed for me because I have Kansas State, Texas in the top, but projected to finish ahead of, as I mentioned, is Tech finish in the conference. They have Tyler at quarterback, senior. They have premier wide receiver. I have Bradley, 744 yards and 6 outs as freshman. You look at the defense. Joshing is a good defensive tackle that next time last Texas, and one player negated about Steve Linton is an edge on Syracuse, but he entered transfer, went to Texas. He saw and did, and was like, I think I can do that. Get a new opportunity. So Texas has He's already tweeted Linton, so I think it's a really interesting situation. Texas rusher usually become a first-round pick. Texas is going to build that reputation for being edge rusher. Portal and all the going. And what's crazy is projected to finish 5th in the conference. They get road, at Houston at home, Virginia on the road, Wyoming at home. They get at home, at TC at home. They just on the road at Texas. Compared to playing Oklahoma, I mean, best scenario 10-2. Lose to Texas. I think they'll lose to State and finish with 3 or 4 losses. But they are finished 7-5. They'll lose to Oregon. So they will lose Oregon, Kansas, and Texas. That minimum of losses, probably trap game. What Baylor or BYU, they'll probably TCU. As I'd like to see Texas Tech knock up TCU after all the TCUs, I just don't think. Well, I think that's an accurate. Man, I think they're only gonna lose to TCU by because the game's this year. TCU has competition, but this back is that TCU new offensive coordinators. There's a state if there's a the top 5 cause some chaos. Keep an eye on Texas Tech, Joey, and eye on the end of the year winning 4 wins against Kansas overtime in their game 25. Keep an eye on them. They ended the year on a high note, so just look for them.
Texas Tech because explosive team in the country. Always have the consistency. The big plays are of the
and before all best team, people are going to pat their best right now. There was an 09, or I think it was the 9 during my year of high school. Like tree, and I hated it. They were like, and they were in the national. A brief window before things blew down the stretch.
I agree, and the thing is that not only that year, had kind of a, and they got made, they got these actual. They had the defensive end.
Fully.
I guess like we have.
They went 8-5 with a first-year coach. Joey McGuire was there. He was a first coach at Tech. He got the bowl game. Joey McGuire actually does being the best head coach in the country. I know TCU's head coach was your coach, but he came from Sonny Dykes. He came from brought on culture, and Garrett Riley's done. So Garrett Riley is. Yeah. I'm not. I mean, Joey McGuire did an incredible job first year, going 8-5 as coach, but that kind of got over Sonny Dykes because he was a first coach. Artesian and was a second coach, so that overshadowed.
Yeah, that's another plus. Second year in the system.
It's possible that Texas jumps. I'm not saying it, but that because TCU was in the national title, we're going to benefit of the doubt. So 6 for me. They play their way 5 of the this year. Just
absolutely not. They're always the big play is as vaulted.
say 5 and they're 7-5 and 2 actually lose all games to Texas and Kansas, and that would be a heartbreaking way to end the season because they're 9-0 and then year and Big 12 title literally because that was and Texas Tech team was undefeated and that was so close to the title, but then Kansas and Texas, but that would be go out
because they are a good team, and I do like.
And I feel like if we 6 breakdown, Texas Tech would be the cut on that. Get to West Virginia, one player for a player over. It's a player on his radar now back to school. Zach is going to be the 5 centers draft. It's the good thing West Virginia has going now. Project to finish in the conference. They have a running back. Things are so West Virginia. Rodney Gallup, 3-star recruit, has started slot right away. Freshman. 2 stars on the offensive line. They did lose Don still. They freshman on defense 2 trade. So gonna be interesting to see. You're a team starting a freshman, and the freshman's not a 4 or 5 star freshman. There's usually some growth pains. They're just having their shoulder everything together right gate. West Virginia, West Virginia 5-7 year. They lost 2 scoring games, and I feel like after those, they just room kind of died because Bryce Ford Wheaton, who got drafted, his 2 best games were against Pitt and Kansas, and then everything went downhill after that with him. But Dante Stills got drafted; he was a good player, and I just don't know if they have a star on the defense that could fill the void he left. Lee Kaponga had 92 tackles as a junior, and he's a returning starter at senior. So Lee Kaponga is going to have to come in and pick up. And, Dante Stills, Tony Fields the second, Dante Stills. West Virginia's had some decent players in the front 7. So it's going to be up to Lee Kaponga, their Dante Stills left off, Joey. It's really all I have to say about West Virginia. This is the worst team in the Big 12.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say much about them.
I'm of the belief that the best thing to happen to West Virginia has already happened to them, and that's the Browns having training camp in West Virginia. I don't have any faith in West Virginia to do much of anything this year.
Yep. TCU?
They just don't have anything that excites me.
I have TCU at number 5 in the Big 12. I know they're the consensus number 4 team, but Kansas and Kansas State have more NFL prospects than TCU, and TCU only has 5 NFL prospects. They have Jared Wiley at tight end, Andrew Coker at right tackle, Johnny Hodges at right outside linebacker, Jamoy Hodge at middle linebacker, and Josh Newton at corner. TCU just had a lot of turnover to the NFL draft. They lost 2 receivers in Darius Davis and Quentin Johnston. They lost Kendre Miller. They lost Max Duggan. They lost Trevius Hodges Tomlinson. Has too much turnover right now. They lost their offensive coordinator, Garrett Riley, to Clemson. And right now, Chandler Morris and Chance Nolan, the Oregon State quarterback who got benched, and Chandler Morris, who was Chandler Morris actually beat out Max Duggan for the quarterback job last year, but he got injured, and then Duggan came in and took the job from Morris and the rest is history. So, and Chandler Morris ended up winning that job as a true freshman. That's the other thing, Joey. He actually beat out Max Duggan for the quarterback job as a true freshman. And looking back on it, that's kind of impressive considering that Duggan was a Heisman finalist. But I think that says more about Garrett Riley. That says more about Riley, in my opinion. I would start Chandler Morris over Chance Nolan because there's a lot of people that say Chance Nolan, he cussed at his teammates and he had a really poor attitude at Oregon State. So I would start Chandler Morris over him. If he was able to beat out Duggan for the quarterback job, I would just roll with Morris and only play Chance Nolan if Morris gets injured again. So, but yeah, I just don't think TCU is going to be the same team as far as their identity goes. They lost that guard/center Steve Avila too. Steve Avila was the Rams' second-round pick. So, I mean, TCU had a lot of turnover on both sides of the ball, Joey. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think it's pretty obvious to both of us. And they lost their offensive coordinator too. And with Morris and Chance Nolan, there's a little bit of uncertainty at quarterback. So for me, TCU is the number 5 team. Sorry, but the Horned Frogs, I am not giving them the benefit of the doubt here. I think they lose to Kansas State, they lose to Texas, and they lose to Oklahoma. That's 3 losses. And, you know, I think Colorado and Texas Tech are trap games, Joey. I really do. I'm not stupid enough to pick BYU to beat TCU. Slovis would have to play out of his mind against TCU in Texas Christian. I don't see that happening. But yeah, I mean, I honestly, I think the road game against Texas Tech and the home opener against Colorado with Shedeur Sanders, I think those are potential trap games for TCU this year, Joey. We'll see, but I think TCU's floor is 7-5, and I think their ceiling is 9-3, and they're projected to finish 8-4. So that's, yeah. So for me, I think I'm putting TCU in at number 5 on my rankings. Look, I'm going through Texas, Oklahoma, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19 players on Texas. I think we're in agreement with Texas at 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players on Oklahoma. 6 players on Kansas State. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 14 players on Kansas. So the big kicker here, Joey, is that after Texas, the team with the most NFL prospects is the Kansas Jayhawks. That's kind of surprising, but, you know, I kind of have to go through. Kansas does not play Oklahoma. Oklahoma, I think they lose to Texas. And I think they lose to Kansas on the road. So that's 2 losses. Kansas gets Kansas State at home and Oklahoma at home. Honestly, Kansas might only have 1 loss against Texas heading into the Big 12 title. So I think Texas and Kansas would be my top 2. So we got to put that's a coin flip though between Kansas State and Oklahoma for number 4 because they both have 6 NFL prospects. That's a coin flip because I'll put Kansas State at 4 and Oklahoma at 3. I think that's the fairest way to go about this, Joey, because Kansas State play Oklahoma? No, they don't. They play Texas and Kansas on the road. They get Texas Tech and Oklahoma State on the road. They get Missouri on the road. They're going to lose it. I think they're going to lose at least 4 or 5 games due to their schedule. I mean, I think they lose to Missouri, and I think they lose to Texas and Kansas. And I think either TCU beats Kansas State in Kansas State. I'm picking Kansas State to win that game, but I think Oklahoma State or Texas Tech beats Kansas State in a trap game, Joey. I'm just going to throw that out there because Kansas State has to go to both Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. I could definitely see Texas Tech beating Kansas State in a trap game, Joey. But, you know, Kansas State's interesting because they're the defending Big 12 champions. They have Will Howard at quarterback. They have KT Leveston at left tackle. They have a star left guard in Cooper Beebe, who's a first-round prospect. Hayden Gilliam's their center. Hadley Panzer's their right guard. and Christian Duffy's their right tackle. They have all 5 starters returning on the offensive line, but their 2 star players that they lost are Deuce Vaughn at running back and Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who's going to be starting at edge rusher with Charles Omenihu, who's suspended for the first 6 games. Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who won a one-on-one against Donovan Smith, he's going to be the starting right end right out of the gate as a rookie. So the Chiefs, it looks like Kansas State lost their 2 star players, and Deuce Vaughn's on the Cowboys competing for a roster spot. So, I mean, those are not guys that Kansas State can replace. And their number 1 receiver, Malik Knowles, is also gone. So I don't trust Kansas State right now. And Will Howard did a great job coming in and replacing Skylar Thompson, but they don't have their star running back. They don't have their number 1 receiver. They don't have Felix Anudike-Uzomah, and they also lost Julius Brents, I believe, the corner the Colts took in the 2nd round of Kansas State. Really good man press corner. He's a big loss too. So I'm going to put Kansas State at 4 and Oklahoma at 3 for that reason, Joey. And I think you might make the argument for Oklahoma at 2, but I think we're in agreement. Kansas State at number 4, this is an appropriate spot for them. Athlon has them at number 3. But I think they're number 4. I think they are slightly overhyped by the media this year. I mean, that's just a lot of impact players they lost, Joey. Brents at corner, Anudike-Uzomah at edge rusher was a 1st-round pick by the Chiefs. And then Deuce Vaughn at running back, who was a consistent 1,000-yard rusher despite his size. Those are 3-star players. And if you want to add a 4th impact player, you can throw Malik Knowles, the wide receiver, into that equation. So, for me, that's why Kansas State comes in at number 4, Joey, because I just don't think they've recruited players good enough to replace the guys they lost. They're a good football team. They're going to win anywhere from 7 to 9 games, but I think I think they're going to take a step back. What are your thoughts on Kansas State before I get to Oklahoma, Kansas, and Texas?
They're still in the middle of the pack, but I don't think they're as high as they were.
I mean, Kansas State really peaked last year because they had the star corner, star edge rusher, star running back, experienced offensive line, experienced receiver, quarterback who came into his own, and just everything clicked for Kansas State. They're not they can just recruit the top. They just peaked last year. Kansas guys peaked last year when you got your ass by Bryce Young and Will Anderson. You actually led Bama after quarter, but they couldn't that level. So, you know, I'll give them that, but I just think they're the 4. Look at Oklahoma. Dylan Real at Walter Rouse was a better class, and he's a guy that would have been drafted if he did the draft. Also back to school, Stanford, he transferred portal, and he decided to play in Oklahoma. That's interesting because he had better game at left center, the starter. Felt this offensive line. Brown got drafted. I feel like churn out offense year after year after year. Brown's been the most successful. Also had Humphrey, and then they had Ben Powers, and we both had Ben Powers in the 2019 draft. And they had Creed Humphrey 21. Oklahoma Boomer. This is just a that's turn out offensive. They had this year. Like Oklahoma, one of these continues to churn out talent. Drake at wide receiver. Is that related to coach? It's not my business. Related to Bob's Oklahoma on defense and down rusher who team with 4. And Danielson at outside the junior who team 25. Stutzman not for the draft. Stutzman players Oklahoma defense back to Woody Davis, who are both seniors. Secondary, their linebacker and their edge are their best players, but those are the only 2 players. Stuff first team as me. I'm gonna have Kansas. This is I think they town. So I'm at 3. If you want to, I put Oklahoma at, but I'm gonna run buddy in the Kansas Hawks because is Davis is there and Jalen start the lost home and they were 4 injured. ECU. If Davis stays healthy or gets injured, maybe makes the Big 12 instead. Devin at running back. They have Luke wide receiver, Mayor Child, Logan Brown. Yeah, Logan Brown, the West Cockle. He got dismissed from the program into a fight with mate at Jay and Logan. Yeah, actually has a 5-star quarter. They Nowitzki, the center that I thought forced to get drafted. He ended up for a year of eligibility. Kansas has 2 linemen. They have a running back, wide receiver. I think the last Kansas had this much on off was Mark, coach, and they made the bowl. But defense that Richmond to Terry Hill Jr. And then they have Kobe Bryant, Young, Mello Dotson, 3 starters. They also LSU Curtis McGee, player. DJ Burr emerged as free safety. So this is a very complete team. They don't have the edge rushers, the defensive prospects you're used to see. They have their secondary since they made Orange Bowl. Joey, I wrote Texas. I was wrong. TCU being a course, dead on about. I nailed with that. It's not really our course. I think 12 championship before losing to Texas. Texas and Dallas, this neutral, not a Austin, Texas with that. They play in Dallas. I think they play world back to Texas because I think we agree Texas 12, but are they gonna? Who's gonna challenge them? Is it gonna be over Kansas? And I'm leaning towards Kansas. How does that sound?
For Kansas.
On Kansas, Oklahoma. That's what I'm taking. Oklahoma. Kansas is the home team against Oklahoma this year. That's why I'm picking Kansas. But around to James, season shot upset, Joey.
Yeah. I'll go with Oklahoma and Tech championship games.
So you don't have to make the big title.
I'm going to throw a little mention there.
Texas is loaded both the ball out there. You were worthy. Don came through the report. Sanders type all starters in the offense back. Connor Major and Chris. They have Sweat and Murphy defensive tackle despite losing defensive tackles. And they have all their returners. Watts, Gavin, Barron, Thompson, Jalen Cattle saw safety train Texas. So that's 5 players in the secondary. That's players on defense. 5 on the offense line, 13. You look at the 18 NFL Arch made that's Texas. So I don't see how this 12 this year. I have Texas. You have Oklahoma Tech. I think really interesting matchup because I mean Oklahoma season needed. I think you're to go, but Oklahoma and Texas in the play. You can't deny the team at like let's say Texas beats Alabama, but Oklahoma wins the Red River Shootout and wins the top point playoff. Because I look at USC lose 1. I think they will lose on the road to Oregon, but I still win the Pac-12. And I don't want to do for next show. Michigan's probably Georgia and Alabama will both be title. Loser will get the 3. That really leaves USC, Ohio State, Lane if you go Big 12 no lot because I think we're not going to be this team in the ACC, and I don't think there's a team in the Big 12 either. Texas with winning the conference. I have Kansas losing to Texas, both Kansas and Texas loss, which is really
big year in the like the ability Texas the offensive line play are gonna
I think both Texas and Oklahoma have really good line. Thing is when you were some games, but other games against Oklahoma State, he over like past Oklahoma State. That's why when he could be the second quarter off the board. He could also end up being first quarterback in the Big 12. Henry Jones. Accuracy that play.
I take aggressive approach, taking conservative approach.
I'm taking the approach, but I'm pointing how when he had accuracy issues, and if that fixed, they're expected to win. Why opting for Oklahoma and Texas Tech dead?
And I'm also I think there issue, but the thought of but I'm also on the viewer as
I think it was a problem too. I like Dylan Gabriel, but with Ewers is he's got a right arm, but his accuracy is so inconsistent all over the place. He's a man play, and he's got the poor man's Elway, but he's also got the Florida bad as Jerry Jones, and quarterback worse to have a quarterback who has the ceiling to be a poor man's from an arm standpoint, but also point they're out as bad as Jones. That is not right. And if you think a scenario one week Oklahoma a few years, Spencer got in and Williams came in and I always up because like Texas does, but like Arch Ewers is underwhelming games, and Arch I think it's a really crazy area. Similar to what I had to go with Rams. It's very similar. It's all identical, quite identical, but it's very, very similar.
The other scenario, Red is going to the best game of his career. He can run a long pass. Texas quarter comes off the pass. Perfect.
Gabriel, Red River shootout. Oklahoma's got the in your corners.
Texas.
Not sure whether that result really quickly. It's almost 50, almost 2 start by 2. I'm just giving you a head up, Joe.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be an asshole. You wanted to talk about the North. It's all giving you a position. So Texas,
you're fine.
Texas is in the season alley. So Texas goes to for the season on November 4th. I believe that's a black. I want to check the calendar with talk Ravens.
Try not to run. You go.
Yes, Black Friday following thing. So Dolphins play on Black Friday on Amazon Prime. So we're really not going to get to that game because it's like if that game's on at the same time, Jets Dolphins, your attention is probably focused on the Jets Dolphins Black Friday game. So yeah, that's fun. Aaron Rodgers versus Tua on Black Friday, the rematch. Because remember, they played on Christmas last year, where Aaron Rodgers, Miami, and beat Tua on Christmas. They're playing in New York on Black Friday this year. So, quarterback to face off each other on assuming Tua avoids concussion this year. And he avoids concussion, but he does. Rodgers will be quarterback Friday and Christmas. That's an
Remind me, the Dolphins are experimenting and everybody's going too fast, and they're going to buy it to put his. However, it is that something that it often doesn't into.
Yeah. The Ravens depth chart. I'm gonna look at the playoff victors thing, but I'm gonna the Ravens down the computer because my phone is running low on battery. It's not yet, but like 30-20%. Just a heads up. If there's a scenario where it dies during the odds at 57. There's the iPad podcast. You go live when we stream talks. You have to use the iPad for talk. That's the here that I learned. It's valuable to learn, but Ravens are we're gonna get into Ravens here. I have 8. And I think their offense is healthy of injury because right now, and like Ravens, they have Jackson. I think if the Ravens is 8 football, the same hope Ravens are one of these teams that the computers blow up. I don't know why. I'm just happy it doesn't can't be yet. Screw it, my phone until my phone runs low on battery. All right, so here we go. The Ravens less than healthy, yes, but offensively healthy. Bateman, Jake Dobbins, and Patrick Carter all looked at the moment. So that is noteworthy.